Tim Crane's The Unity of Unconscious. First of all, by the unity of unconscious, all Crane means is that his conception of unconscious beliefs can be useful to philosophers, cognitive scientists, and psychotherapists. That's all he means. It doesn't have anything to do with his actual view or the conception that he offers to account for what unconscious beliefs are. It just means it can be used across various disciplines and fields. The contribution that the article does make is that Crane argues that what he calls the standard view of the unconscious is faulty. And that standard view is that our unconscious beliefs are made up of thousands, if not millions, of propositions. Propositions are simply statements that can have a truth value. For example, a proposition would be, Rufus just video bombed this video. Hi Rufus, how are you? Yes, I know you're hungry. I'll make you supper in a minute. It's a statement that could be true or false. In this case, it is true. Thank you, Rufus. Another proposition could be that there are 4 jack-o'-lanterns in the background. A statement that's either true or false. This one's true. There would be 5 jack-o'-lanterns in the background, but one of them fell off the ledge and had an early demise. All of these jack-o'-lanterns will meet a demise by shotgun very soon because Halloween is over and they're attracting gnats. But in any case, these are just propositions, statements that are either true or false. And the standard view is that our subconscious minds, our subconscious beliefs are made up of propositions. Well, Crane argues that these statements such as Rufus video bombed this mini lecture, or there are 4 jack-o'-lanterns in the background, these statements are way too clear and way too precise to actually be in our subconscious minds. We would have to have so many clearly articulated and worked out propositions that our minds just couldn't handle all that. That just doesn't seem to be consistent in any case with the way our unconscious actually works and the way that we work through beliefs that are in the background of our minds. What he argues is that instead the unconscious is far more confused, far more muddled, far less precise. In some cases it can be contradictory. You could have some beliefs or some memories from your childhood and they might in some cases conflict with beliefs from your adult life, or you might have beliefs that are from what you've learned in science and they might not be reconciled with your beliefs from the area of religion or politics. And you can have those conflicting beliefs in these different areas if you never bring them to the surface, if you never bring them to your surface mind and work through them and reconcile them and then perhaps put them back down into the subconscious as new beliefs that do work with one another and play well with one another. That's the primary contribution of the article, is that the unconscious is far more muddled and confusing and contradictory than the standard, aka propositional view of the unconscious suggests. Crane argues that there are several different benefits to his view. First benefit would be that it can account for the beliefs of non-human animals. For example, Rufus has the belief that if he pesters me, I will feed him supper, which is true. However, he doesn't have a structure of language or that computational syntax, doesn't have those words that if I pester Matt, he will feed me supper and he will feed me more quickly than if I did not pester him. He just at some level knows that if he comes around and he bothers me, that'll remind me to feed him and he'll get fed quicker than otherwise. So the fact that he does hold a belief to that effect, and lots of other beliefs such as if I poop on the driveway, Matt will be unhappy with me, or if Matt says come, that means he wants me to come here. All those different beliefs that my dog has, and Buddy, my German Shepherd, also holds, are genuine beliefs, but they do not take the form of propositions because my dogs do not understand English and they do not have, as far as we know, a worked out dog language. Although they do know bits and pieces of language, or they've associated sounds that I make with things that I want. But in any case, Crane thinks this is a benefit to his view because it can account for the unconscious and even the conscious beliefs of non-human animals. Crane also thinks it's a benefit of his view that it can account for the beliefs of infants. My kids, before they were old enough to know what any words meant at all, they had the instinct that if they felt hungry or if they were cold or if they wanted to be snuggled, they could cry out, and this would cause the adults to give them the attention that they wanted. Soon, though, they transferred from instinctually doing this to thinking, because they in some cases were able to cry more than they needed to in some cases cry when they weren't necessarily in physical pain, but just wanted to maybe make us give them some attention. And so they came to believe things that they couldn't articulate in language because they didn't understand language yet, but they still had these beliefs. Crane thinks it's a benefit of his view that it can account for the beliefs of infants, whereas the standard view, where you have to have propositions, wouldn't be able to account for Rufus or Buddy's beliefs, and it also wouldn't be able to account for Justin, Emily, or Noah's beliefs, my kids. Another benefit is that, what we mentioned at the outset, his view can be useful to philosophers, cognitive scientists, as well as psychoanalysts. And one thing that Crane emphasizes in the article, one thing that might be beneficial to reflect on, is his coverage of how propositions can serve as models for our beliefs. He says that anytime we use a model to describe a system or to describe a concept or describe anything, we lose some fidelity between what that actual thing is and the model that we use to represent it. So if we've got a basketball, we've got some tennis balls, and we're trying to represent the solar system, that allows us to understand the relationship between the orbits and the sizes of those various heavenly bodies, but it loses some of the nuance because the orbits aren't going to be exactly spherical or even elliptical. The size might be off a little bit. We're going to miss things when it comes to the temperature of the different planets versus the sun and the moons and such. And so we're going to lose a little bit when we use that model to better understand what's going on. We miss quite a bit. The same thing happens when we articulate our beliefs in the form of propositions. I think our unconscious is far more confused and far messier than propositions can capture, but we can use propositions nonetheless as models to better understand what it is we believe. And as philosophers or just as thoughtful persons, we can examine those beliefs, and in some cases, if reason warrants, revise them and then believe things that make more sense. Another thing you can think about to better understand the article is Crane's contrast between beliefs that are core and explicit and actual and beliefs that are derived, that are implicit and potential. Core beliefs, I take it from the article, are beliefs that are especially important to us or especially obvious or that we're sure of, such as I'm a human being, I'm sitting on my front porch. A explicit belief would be any of those because I've just made them explicit. They're not something that's implied. An implied belief would be a belief that is a logical implication of another belief that we already hold. And the derived beliefs would be beliefs that we can bring about by combining others. He gives a couple examples in the reading, but in any case, you can think about how we've got all these beliefs that are below the surface, and we've got a few beliefs that are right here that we're examining at the moment. Most of what makes up us, our personality, our worldview, which is a key term from the article. Worldview, Crane explains, makes up all of the beliefs we hold about everything. It's the way we represent the world to ourselves, make sense of the world. And that worldview, again, in different parts of that worldview, you could have beliefs that contradict, probably because you've not clearly articulated them yet to see whether or not they're consistent with one another. But one of the powers and the capacities and the cool things that humans possess and that we can do is that we can dust those off, we can model them in the form of a proposition, and we can revise them if we have good reason to do so. So there you go, Tim Crane's The Unity of Unconscious. Happy post-Halloween.